everybody out there. Welcome to TL's Roadhouse. My old friend Cledus T. Judd's in the house. At least he was my friend until he did bake me a country ham, and that was the end of my shit.
Yeah, that ruined it right there.
Did it right there,
I can't believe he didn't sue me. You know, I've only had one person up here ever threaten to sue me.
Who was
over them parodies. You'll never. I don't even know if I guess we can talk about it on here. I did a song way back in the day, a parody of Garth and Trisha. When Garth did In Another's Eyes, him and Trisha, I did a song called You Need Another Size. And I was at Hermitage Golf Course playing in a golf tournament or something. He was in the parking lot, and he come up to me and he said, "Are you Cledus?" I said, "Yes, sir, I sure am." He said, "I'm not a big fan."
Oh.
I thought, oh, well, rock on. You ain't the first one that's ever told me that. and then he laughed a little, you know, and he said, I just don't think you should do that song, because I'd sent it to his manager. I forgot what's his name. And he said, that song's up for a Grammy, and we don't want to do anything to interfere with it winning a Grammy. I said, really? You done sold more records than the Beatles, and you worry about some other local media and ain't have about 2 records out going to keep you winning a Grammy? And I put it out anyway, and he still won the Grammy. So
it didn't affect shit.
No, not a lick. Didn't affect nothing. But now we all right now, you know. That's the only one ever.
Y'all go to Diddy parties together?
I plead I'll get up and walk out of this damn bus right now.
Just go and get right down there in the meat of it all.
Man, I tell you, no, sir. But I have been to some parties, but not a Diddy party.
Yeah.
I've been to a couple with you. If you don't get into that real quick.
Yeah, we did stuff we probably don't want to talk about.
Man, I bet you there's no way you can remember how we met.
I don't.
And where we met. And it was.
I don't.
And I'm going to toot your horn because it was such a big deal for me. I'm just going to be honest with you. I had moved to town in 1991 or somewhere. When did you get here?
I got in town in the fall of 90. And
Okay,
I got my deal in 91.
That's about right. And I was over at T. Graham Brown's office with Joanne Ritchie, his right-hand girl. And somehow, I mean, she knew I was a Tracy Lawrence fan or something, and she knew what was the dude's name that worked over there. Was it Jerry or who?
Elroy Kahana?
No, it's your office.
Wayne Edwards?
It was the manager.
Jeff Carver, Wayne Edwards?
No, I think
those were my guys back in the early 90s.
Then it was probably 92 or somewhere along there.
That would have been Wayne Edwards, man.
Maybe it was. I can't remember, but they got me hooked on the phone with you. Wasn't no cell phone. I didn't have no cell phone then. And we talked on the phone for about 3 or 4 minutes, and you were super nice, and you invited me over to that office on Music Road.
Right there on 17th Avenue.
And if I remember, there was school desk in there. In a room or something. There was like an old.
I had one that came from my high school.
Yep, I remember that. Yeah. And you were sitting in that school desk when I walked in.
I'd carved my name in it.
I stayed over there for about, I don't know, 20 or 30 minutes, and you was just kind and nice, and it was a lot of fun. That was a big deal to me then, because I still didn't have nothing going at that point. I mean, it was pretty tough. I was sleeping in walk-in closets and taking baths at the YMCA at that time. So that was a big deal. So
it's a tough journey when you first come to town, man. I mean, it's a long process, man.
I'll tell you, and people ask me all the time, because I'm not a singer, if you put $1 million in this floor and told me to sing a harmony part, I had to give you the $1 million back, because I can't do it. I ain't a singer. But I got a little sideways back in the day, way before I ever thought about coming up here, and found myself in Jacksonville, Florida, on a bridge for about 6 hours one afternoon, trying to figure out how to do it. I'd had enough.
Really?
Yeah. It was a bad time for me. I lost everything I'd worked for. I was a barber for a long time, a hairdresser, made a good bit of money in it, and then I got found that stuff. And first time I did crystal meth, about 10 minutes after that, I thought, I'm good now. It's what I've been looking for my whole life. And it was for about a couple of days. And then I spent the next 10 years trying to find that feeling again, and then eventually, man, I found myself in Ponte Vedra Beach, Florida, perched on a bridge for 6 hours trying to figure out how to go off that son of a gun. And by the grace of God, I didn't. If I'd wanted to, I would have. It was probably an attention grabber more than anything, but I needed help.
Yeah, how did you come out of that? Because I know, man, the mental illness and the there's something that happens, man. And I've dealt with some of it myself. I never really disclosed a whole lot of it, but I always had that little nagging voice in my head. I was always, you get up on a balcony on a tall floor
Yes,
motel room,
sir.
you always got that little thing trying to nudge you a little bit closer to the edge. You ever have those feelings like
Buddy,
that?
I
And I fought
attempted
that for
it.
years.
As a kid, I was in and out of. I guess I was in 3 different mental hospitals.
Were you really? I never knew that.
I was.
Would that come from childhood
It
trauma?
did. Yeah, and I was a child at the time from my mom and dad. Fighting, and I mean it was brutal. I hated my dad. He was sot drunk, alcoholic, and they were fighting. One day, I think I was 7 years old, and I had enough, and I jumped up on the bed and took the drawstrings off the curtains and wrapped around my neck as tight as I get them. Jumped off the bed, and if my dad wasn't much of a carpenter, but he knew how to hang curtains because they didn't fall.
Oh, no.
And there I was. If they hadn't walked in, my mom hadn't walked in and found me, I'd died. Did I know what suicide was at 7 years old? Absolutely not. But did I know I wanted them to quit fighting? And that's the only way I could figure out how to do it. And from there, it just progressed, and I was in and out of a couple of them as I got older. But when I came home in 1990 off that bridge, I was still, using, and I was sitting in the floor of a double wide trailer. And carpet, if you laid in it, it looked like a snow angel. It's so thick, with the shag carpet back in the day. And the CMA Awards came on, and Vince Gill had won Song of the Year for a song called When I Call Your Name. Of course, you know it. Man, I turned around, my mom was bawling. And I said, Mama, why are you crying for? And she said, I'd give anything in the world to meet that guy. He's got the prettiest eyelashes I've ever seen. I said, you want to meet Vince Gill? And she said, oh, I'd give anything in the world. I said, I can make that happen. And she said, son, you can't sing a lick. You don't know nothing about nothing. You can't make that happen. So about 4 weeks later, I went to the Buckboard Country Music Showcase where me and Mark Wills started a week apart. Darren Norwood, late Darren, started there. And I got up on stage and did a Atlanta Braves song to the melody of a Delbert McClinton, Shaky Ground. I didn't know what a melody was. And I won $50. And I called my mother on a payphone, collect. And I said, I think I just did something right for a change. And 5.5 months later, she bought me an old Toyota pickup truck, the old Love truck, if you remember, just a bench seat, and where the speakers on both sides, sheet metal was gone out of both sides. I put shirts in it to keep the air off of it, and she gave me $400, and here I came. I didn't know nobody but T. Graham Brown, Bruce Birch, songwriters. And to speed the story up, I would go out to Donaldson Pike. If you remember Ruby Tuesdays out there by the airport,
Yep.
and big old street lights out there. I would go out and pull my truck under it, and I would sleep in that truck, cover up in the closet.
There was a Kmart there back then.
Yep, probably. Yep, there was, and you could see that. I wasn't scared out there for some reason because of the lights, and I would cover up in the clothes that I had in the front seat. The next morning, I'd go to the YMCA, and I'd take a shower, pay $1, and then go to Music Row and just try to, just like I ran it, found you somewhere along through there. And so I did that for about three years of just trying it with everything in my body. And you'll remember this, the ice storm came through in 1994, I think is when it came, right along in there somewhere. Yeah. And I was driving home in that truck from Country Club Enterprises, packing CDs in boxes, and I'll never forget it. I didn't have no defroster in that truck. And I had a Mark Chestnut jewel case cover in my left hand going down 440, and I was scraping that windshield going down the interstate. And gosh, I'm sitting here. The single off that thing said, "Too cold at home." I thought it's too cold in this damn truck, too, I'm telling you. And so when I got home about 3 days later, I got frostbite on this hand. I lost all these fingernails on these 3 fingers, and they thought I was going to lose my fingers. And on a Sunday night, man, I called my mom and I said, I can't do it. Come get me. And she said, are you sure? And I said, I can't do it. I'm hungry. My clothes are filthy. I ain't got no money. I gave it all I had, but I can't do it, Mom. I can't do it. I was bawling. I was at Darren Norwood's house. And in my right ear, God is my witness, I heard Tim McGraw on a transistor radio singing Indian Outlaw. And I didn't have no yellow sheet of paper. I didn't have no pen. And I started humming, "They're my Indian in-laws, came to visit me and my squaw. Been here for a month, y'all. I'm about to lose my mind." And I said, "Mama, I got to call you back." And she said, "What are you talking about?" I said, "I'll call you back." And she said, "Am I coming to get you?" And I said, "Give me a month. I'll let you know." T. Graham Brown gave me some money. Larry Lockamy, Bruce gave me some money. I went in and recorded Indian In-Laws on cassette, and we sent it to 200 radio stations, and 180 or 90 of them played it, and my life changed. And next thing you know, I followed it up with "If Shania Was Mine" and "Butt Bigger Than the Beatles" and all these songs. I had a record deal. I was touring, making money. I mean, it was good money for a poor man, a lot of money. And I came home on a Sunday night, make this story come full circle. Some lady out at Hermitage, I had played in your golf tournament out there before. I don't remember what year that was, but I had played out there at one time. So a lady called me from out there and said, "We need you to come and play in a golf tournament tomorrow." And see, I done got cocky by now and entitled, as we all did. And I said, "Oh, I don't fool with that. I got stuff to do." And she said, "We really need one more person to play in this thing, one more celebrity." So I went out there and I looked down that big wall, and you'll know where it's at, with all the teams on it and everything. And
Hermitage.
Yep, at Hermitage. I got down to 16A, and it was like a Jeff Gossett, a Chris Tate, a Cledus T. Judd, Vince Gill. And I thought, and it had Jeff ride with Vince. I said, "I'll beat you with a 4-iron. I done starved to death, lost everything. I'm riding in the cart with Vince." So I got in the car with Vince, stayed with him all day, and I told him the story of how I ended up there. It was for my mama to meet him. And he asked me to play 9 more holes with him, and I did. And I said, "Man, would you do a video with me if you'd be so kind?" He said, "Book it." Vince anyway, he'd do anything. So about 5 years after I left, maybe 6, Mama sent me up there in an old truck, and I brought her and my aunt up there in a limousine about as long as this bus. And on a Tuesday afternoon, there was a knock on the door, man. John Lloyd Miller, if you remember John, he was my video director. He said, "Moselle, won't you get that door?" And man, with every step that woman took across that floor, I could see the heartache, how hard it was, the struggle. But I knew I was fixed to do something right. And my mother opened that door, and there stood Vince Gill. And I said, "I told you, you meet him one day." And she jumped up in his arms, and I thought she was going to try to stick her tongue in his mouth. But that was the single-handedly the biggest thing I'd ever done in my life, probably, because it was just like you said before we went on there. Man, it's hard up here. It's really difficult.
It comes with a lot of challenges, and it's emotionally exhausting. I mean, this is not an easy journey for anybody. Even when you feel like you got the world by the gonads, it can come back and bite you really hard, man. I've seen the highs and lows of all of it, just like most of us have.
Man, it was one of the most, and I think that's why I still to this day have friends like you and Kix and Ronnie, and we don't have to name drop or whatever, but I think I did it the hard way, because I didn't have the talent, But
So I'm fascinated by this because I really thought that you had some kind of plan, like you were a big Roger Miller fan. You'd been fans of Gallagher. You kind of watched all that stuff shake out.
No,
it was just like the hand of God just came down and said, "Boom, there it is."
When Mama said she wanted to meet Vince Gill, and I had no plan, none. Like I said, T. Graham happened to be, and Bruce, if you remember Bruce, a great songwriter, he kind of helped me get here, and they paid me $125 a week to write songs. I didn't know how to write songs. I just knew that I wanted more than what I had. And see, I was still in active addiction at that point.
Yeah.
I was still using, and it's dangerous. And when you got money and you're an addict, it's not a good combination. And I can tell you, how it all ended. September 11th, 2004, Julie was pregnant with Caitlin. And we went to the hospital at Vanderbilt, 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning, and Caitlin was born. And I had $1,000 cash in one pocket, and I had $1,500 worth of cocaine in the other pocket. And right after Caitlin was born, 5 minutes, I said, I got to go to the bathroom. You know, my nerves are shot. I got to go get some relief. And I went to the bathroom in Vanderbilt, and I closed the door behind me as just an old cold, you know, typical hospital bathroom. And I opened up the stall door, and I took that cocaine out. It's about a half ounce, you know, and I had a quarter in my pocket, and I dug that quarter deep in there. And right as I pulled that quarter out of that bag of dope, I knew somebody saw me. I knew somebody looking at me. And I thought, okay, it's fixing to end now. I'm busted, you know. And I turned around, raised up, and you'll never guess who I saw.
Your mama.
Me. Looking in that mirror. I raised up, and there I was. Face looked like a powdered donut. I looked at myself, and I thought, I was the ugliest, disfigured human being that I had ever seen before. And man, I said, you know what? You're a sorry son of a bitch. If you've waited your whole life to have this precious gift God just gave you, and you're going to come in here and throw it all away with a bag of dope. And I mean, I was ate up with remorse and guilt. And I took that bag of dope, Tracy, and I slung it up against the bathroom wall where the toilet was, and cocaine went everywhere. And I got down on my knees. Here I have done a lot, you know, not as much as some, but a lot more than others. And I found myself in a hospital room in Vanderbilt, or a bathroom in Vanderbilt, on my hands and knees with both hands in toilet water, slinging the water up on the wall to try to wash it off the wall and get rid of it. And while I was down there, I just said, hell, I'm down here anyway. God, I need a little help. And I said a little prayer to myself, and I stood up with that, and I dropped that quarter on the floor, and it hit that towel, and it hit on its side, and it was going round and round, and the circles got smaller. I'll never forget as long as I live. And I just kept watching that quarter. I don't know the significance of it yet, but I just knew that when it stopped, so would I. And that quarter got smaller, and it stopped, and I picked it up, and I put it in my wallet where it's been for 20 years, and I never used again. Wow. Ever.
So you never had to go, never did rehab,
Nope,
never did anything?
I did go to rehab, but it didn't do no good. I went to Vanderbilt at one time. You know, I was out in New Mexico, and man, I did too much. I thought I was going to die, you know, and I called my manager. I said, I got to come home. I got to check in. I'm in a bad way. And typical management, well, you're going to lose a lot of money. They ain't care going to lose my life. You know, They worry about the money. And I did come home, and I stayed a couple of days, but it was worthless. You know, it takes a lot more. I work 2 days a week. I work with a company called Lawrence County Recovery, where I do a podcast for recovering addicts, and we let them come on the show and on the podcast and tell their story. And, you know, look, me and you ain't got a story compared to the stories that I've been privileged to sit and listen to. You can't even fathom what these people go through. And I just always told God, if I ever did make it through, that I would try to help those that suffer from, you know, addiction and mental illness, because you looking right across, you 6 feet from one that has it.
How was the spiritual journey after that?
I don't know. I think I had such a relief that I probably didn't put as much emphasis on it. But as I got a little bit older, like you were saying a while ago, I realized, you know, that all people. Somebody asked me the other day in counseling, they said, if you had to do it all over again, what would you change? What would you change? I said, hell, nothing. Because if I'd have changed anything, then I couldn't have my testimony and what I've been through in order to help the next dude that, you know, is coming up through the ranks. And there's some out there, you know them well as I do.
Oh, yeah.
If they ain't careful, they'll be like me. and
Well, the temptations and all the stuff is still out there. And when you get in this business, if you come into it with a pre-existing condition, like a lot of us do,
absolutely.
and all of a sudden you get money and you get access, then it becomes a whole lot easier just to overindulge in all of it. I mean,
Money
it's
and
always there.
oh yeah, dude.
And when you get to that place, I could go in any city, I could find anything I wanted at any time.
Golf's the one thing that I love more than anything. Still play it at a decently high level, and I would literally spend my mornings on the phone, going, "Meet me here, meet me there, meet me here. I'll meet you on side. I'll come to you. I'll come to you." I couldn't even get to the golf course without it. And then I'd get to the golf course, and about every third or fourth hole, I'd hit a ball out of bounds. I'd try to hit it out in the woods somewhere where I could go out there and use, and then keep on. And that's the God's honest truth, man. That's when you know it's bad there.
Oh yeah.
And but now after 2004, by the grace of God, I mean, I got baptized several years ago, and I was standing up there getting ready to be baptized at Christ Temple Church, and man, it was the craziest thing. I've wrote songs. I always wanted to write a big song, like everybody does up here, and I wrote and wrote. I wrote at Sony. It didn't have a whole lot of luck. Went to Warner Chapel. Didn't have a whole lot of luck. A little bit more luck there. And right as I was getting ready to get baptized, right before I stepped in that water, everything that I had went through as a kid, from being abused as a kid, from the drugs, the money, everything we've lived and, together in this business and in life, I never saw nothing good. Not one thing that I recall that was good in my life when I was standing there. And then all of a sudden, I just there was a peace came over me, and I said, I'm fixing to leave all that in 3 feet of water. And I went down one man, came up another, and me and Jeremy Bussey and Jace Hine wrote 3 feet of water that Brantley cut and went gold, on I think the record before then, and I've just kept going ever since.
What gives you that peace now? How do you hold on to that peace?
Honestly, to tell you the God's honest truth, sitting here doing what I'm doing now.
Does the counseling and sharing your story, does that give you a lot?
Can't describe
Because
it.
there's so much about it. And I've been through part of this journey. I've had anger issues, and I've had to seek counseling in my family, and I've been through a whole lot over the years. A lot of people don't even know about. But there's something about finding that grace and being able to let that burden down. They talk about when you find God that you stop carrying that burden around.
Absolutely.
You realize there's so many things that kids don't understand, that when they hold on to childhood trauma, that they don't realize that they're holding on to something they had no control over. And you carry so much guilt and so much regret because, well, maybe if I'd have stepped in between mama and daddy, or maybe if I'd have stood up a little bit sooner, or maybe if I'd have kept my mouth shut, maybe if I'd have cleaned my room. You carry all that guilt that's ingrained in you. It's heavy stuff.
Yeah.
And finally to get to a place where you can let all that stuff go is an amazing thing. And I, as all the charity work that we all do around here, it's a big part of our lives. You realize that there's a lot of people that come from really bad situations in life that never find the strength or the grace to overcome it. And it's sad. You can see it in their eyes.
Yeah, man. And you can offer all the help as we do at Lawrence County Recovery, and reach out but until somebody finally has the inner self to be able to do it, it's you can give them all the tools, but sometimes it ain't enough. I mean, I watch it happen, and I'll give you 2 scenarios real quick. I know you'll run me out here, but as a kid, I had premeditated my suicide. I always said, when mama dies, I die, because I couldn't live. I knew that I couldn't live without my mother. My dad, I hated his guts with every ounce of hate you can have in your body. And by the grace of God, when Caitlin was born, that took that notion away. It's never crossed my mind ever again. But I'm writing a book now called Cledus T, Judd, Manic Impressive, and in the book it talks about my mom, and she ended up getting Alzheimer's, and I would go to the nursing home where my grandmother had went and died, my grandfather had went and died, and I knew that my mom was going to do the same thing. And I would go down there every other weekend from Kentucky and West Virginia, and I would sit there and talk to her and talk to her. And each time I would come, her vocabulary would get less and less. And I went in one Saturday afternoon. I walked in, and she looked right dead at me, and she said, "Well, Brent, where the hell have you been?" I said, "Brent?" She said, "Yeah, Brent." She said, "Where's Barry at?" You know, I'm Barry. Brent was my best friend growing up. And I said, "Well, hell, I'm right here, Mama." Well, she didn't know me anymore. And about 30 minutes later, she thought I was her dad, my grandfather, Keller. And I was sitting there pissed off, ready to fight everybody because I knew that I had lost her. And then I thought, well, here's what I'll do. If she don't know that it's me, I'm going to be the best damn actor that's ever walked in this nursing home, and I'm going to play every part of every person that she thinks I am. I'm prepared for it. I may never get an Academy Award, but bring it on, Mama, because if that's what it takes for me to communicate with you, then I'll be whoever you think I am. And that went on for 6 months of different characters. Or my mom, Myrna, her best friend, and I'd sit there, Tracy, for as long as we've been doing this podcast, just being somebody that I wasn't, just having, because she would talk, she would communicate. Then it became a point where she never spoke again. She and I would walk out of that nursing home, and boy, you talking about cussing God. Buddy, I did it. I said words that we can't say on this podcast. I was so hurt. You know, God, you know, I've gave my mother everything I've ever had. I bought her a house. She was my best friend. You SOB, you know, you ain't got no power. If you did, you would give me another conversation. And it was ugly. And they called me from hospice 6 months after that last time she spoke to me and said, "Hey, come on home. It's time." And so I was getting ready to go home, and she didn't die that particular time that I went, but I was getting ready to come back to Kentucky, and I had dropped my glasses off my hat into the sink, and I thought, man, I'm gonna wake her up. It's gonna be a disaster, you know. And she raised her head up, and she looked at me, and I looked at her, and I'll never forget it. She looked me dead in the eye, and she said, "Well, God, is that you?" And I thought, now I played all these other parts. I'm not sure how to play the part of God. And I just was really peaceful. And I said, "Yes, ma'am, it's me." And she said, "I made it, didn't I?" And I said, "Yep, you made it." She laid her head down and never spoke another word ever. Not one hey, bye, nothing. And when I went to see her the last time, I'd been there 4 days, and I was going to take a shower. It was about midnight, and she was close to dying. And I turned the light on over the bed, and I said, "Mom, I know you can't hear me. I gotta go take a shower. My back's broke sitting in this damn chair." And I said, "Just do me a favor. Don't die till I get back." And I said, "I love you." And she said, "Well, I love you too, son." As plain as I'm sitting in this room right here. Hadn't spoke to me in 6 months, not a word. And she spoke it just as plain as just like I was the crazy one. And she said, "Well, I love you too, son." And I looked around the room. Nobody was there. And when I drove to Bert's house to take a shower, I think that was God's way of saying, for all them times you cussed me, for all them times you doubted me, for all them flowers that you bought her, for all the things you done for her, I'm going to show you the power I got. Because I'm going to give you that one last little gift of an "I love you too, son." Because tomorrow, she's going to come home and be with me. And she died the next day.
Having kids and everything, and my wife and I have discussed this many times over the years. We're getting ready to celebrate our 25th anniversary, which is amazing.
I've been married 25 times.
Generational curses, I think, are a very real thing, and I think when you start a family and you come from such a traumatic background, you desperately want to do everything you can to change that dynamic. How do you approach your kids differently? Do you catch yourself falling into the trap of doing things that were done to you sometimes? Do you really have to watch it?
I caught myself that. Yeah. I told Caitlin, she got married a few weeks ago, and And I had a long talk with her. It's probably the best analogy I've ever gave her. I said, Kate, I said, I'm sorry for my shortcomings. I said, but I did the very best I could with the amount of tools that I had in my tool belt. It's hard to build a house with a good foundation with not many tools.
Yeah.
And I didn't have them. So I said, I hope you'll forgive me. You know, we're super close. And of course, you know, I was being overly dramatic, but I just really thought, man, it goes for a lot of us. You know, the more tools you can put in your tool belt to learn to raise kids or help raise kids or just to navigate life in general. I mean, you're looking at a dude whose dad would call him. And you're going to run your head through that window when I tell you this. My dad was very abusive, not physically, mentally. I can't even describe it to you. I was 17 years old, and he called me on the phone, and he said, hey, get on down here to Ackworth, which is not far from Cowboys right there. He said, get on down here. He said, I know I've been a horrible dad, the worst dad in history. He said, I know you love Corvettes. And he said, I went and bought you a yellow Corvette from Days Chevrolet, paid for it out of my Lockheed money where he worked at. He said, it's yours for all the hard times I put you through, for all the misery I put you through. Tell Michael, who's my best friend, one of my best friends, said, have him bring you down here and you can have, as long as you pay the insurance, it's yours forever. And man, I called Michael and I said, damn, Dad done had a change of heart. Let's go. I got me a Saturday night, you know, we got us a Corvette. We get down to Ackworth, pull in the driveway, and guess what?
Nothing.
Nothing.
That's pretty mean.
Nothing. No sign, no mention. You know what there was? Giggles. Just giggles. And I got in the car. Mike said, what do we do? I said, we go back home. So you talking about hatred that I had built up. I can't describe it. I was working in Tampa. To close the story up, I was working in Tampa. I had not talked to my dad in 3 years. And Mom called and said, hey, I was just going to let you know your dad has cancer. And I ain't going to tell you what I thought. I thought, good for him. And she said, you might want to call him. And I said, I'll call him. So I did. And I said, why don't you call and tell me you had it, Dad? And he said, didn't figure you'd answer no way. And all of a sudden, Tracy Lawrence, God is my witness. I never, ever would have thought this. I said, well, I tell you what I'm going to do. I'm coming home. And I'm going to take care of my daddy. I'm going to pack my bags. My Colada's going to put me in ISD in line in your basement. And I'm going to come home and I'm going to take care of my daddy. You didn't take care of me. I'm going to come home and take care of you. And I drove home, and for 4 months, I cut that son of a bitch's toenails. I shaved his face. I cut his hair. I washed his body. And in one night, it was about 7:30 at night, and I heard him upstairs when nobody home, me and him. He had this ranch house over a basement. And I walked upstairs, and, you know, his bedroom was back in the back, got that hallway, and that old dim light right in the middle, you know. And he walked out of that bedroom, Tracy Lawrence, with a pistol in his hand. And I was at the front of the house, and he was at the back. And he had 38 in his hand, and I said, okay, there's 3 things fixing to happen. He going to shoot me, he going to shoot himself, or he going to shoot us both. And this will be the end of me and him and us right here. And I said, Daddy, why you got that gun? He said, you know why I got this gun. He started walking up the hall towards me. And for some reason, dude, I started walking towards him. And I said, give me the gun, Dad. And he said, no. He said, as a young man, I had to watch your grandmother, my mother, die of cancer. And he said, as a grown man, I had to watch your granddaddy, my daddy, die of cancer. And he said, now, you as a grown man, got to watch your daddy die of cancer. And he said, son, I have suffered long enough. And he pulled the trigger and he raised it up and he said, shoot me. And I said, I can't shoot you, Daddy. He said, shoot me. And he said, even that ain't good enough. And I said, I can't shoot you, but give me the gun. And he put his finger on the hammer and he let the hammer off. He turned the gun upside down. He handed it to me. And he said, if you won't shoot me, will you do me one last favor? And I said, yes, sir, whatever you want to do. He said, would you sit at the dinner table with me? 47 years old, never sat at a table with my daddy, not one time. And I said, yes, sir, I'll sit at the dinner table with you. And we sat at a dinner table, old round table in his kitchen. And he said, when you was born, I didn't want a kid. I didn't want to start with. That ain't your fault. That was my fault. I've never been a daddy to you. He said, I'm going to ask you one last favor. And he said, you don't have to do it. I said, whatever you need. He said, you reckon, I'll never forget it, quote, he said, reckon. He said, you reckon you could find it in your heart to forgive me. And it took me about 5 damn seconds to say, all is forgiven. That's all I ever wanted. See, there was no agenda there. There was no motive. There was no car. There was nothing except a genuine dad to his son asking for a reprieve.
What do you think made him that way?
I don't think he wanted me to live the rest of my life.
I mean, what made him abusive and
Oh,
the way
that
that
I
he
don't know,
was
because
as
he
you were a
was
child?
not
Did he come from that?
No. My grandparents were not like that.
Was it just alcoholism?
Probably, and the fact that he just
Miserable in his life?
miserable, just a miserable life. And when I was able to say, I forgive you, and he was bewildered, and he said, he started reaching his pocket, and I thought, here comes another damn gun. I'm out. He reached in his pocket, got his wallet out, pulled a $100 bill out, and said, go to Texas Roadhouse, Longhorns, and get me and you a steak, and stop by the beer store and get me a Pabst Blue Ribbon, and get you whatever you want. Let's me and you eat dinner at this supper table.
Wow.
And I did, and he died 2 or 3 weeks later. But man, in both of those scenarios with my mom and my dad, what a gift. That was a gift from God that I got an apology and was asked to forgive, because I can live my life now.
I can tell that you're still hanging on to a lot of that.
It's tough.
There's
Yeah,
still
man, it's
there's still a little bit of regret in there. I mean,
man.
and at some point you got to let all that stuff go, though. I mean, as you grow through the process.
I listen. I would like to sit here and tell you as a friend that I'm capable of letting it all go. I don't know. It's like when you get branded, and when you brand a cow.
Yeah.
It'll grow hair over that brand, but you know what? That brand's still under there. So what I try to do, what gives me healing, I can go out and sing these funny songs and people giggle and laugh, and I had a wonderful career doing it, but it brings me about as much joy as stepping on a nail. But when I can sit here in front of you, or go out to a church, or go to a rehabilitation center and share my testimony, and have some man come up to me and go, you know what? I'm going to go buy me a damn guitar. Because if you can do what you did, I'm going to learn to play the guitar. Because then I can go get in my van and go on down the road and go, I did good today. And that's what I'll do with the rest of my life, is try to give somebody else, because I didn't have no comfort. I always said I was the overachieving underdog. I ain't never failed at nothing but marriages. They said I'd never play basketball. I was too fat. I played college basketball, full scholarship. They said I'd never be nothing but a barber. I went from a barber to doing the world championships of hairdressing in Dusseldorf, West Germany, with Whitney Houston 10 feet from me. They said I'd never make it in the music business. I sold 2 million records, got platinum record on my wall. And none of that gives me near the fulfillment as being able to go tell a story and help somebody recover from trauma like I have.
I've had this conversation with a few other artists too, and it's hard to rationalize it in your mind. This career is basically based on complete idolatry. And as somebody that is a believer, that has been through challenges of life. I mean, I wrestle with that sometimes about, am I supposed to continue to do this? How deep does it go? I mean, that's a real thing.
It's more real now.
It's very real.
Yeah.
And, we didn't experience a lot of the darkness of what you see on the Super Bowl halftime shows, and the rap industry and the stuff coming out of LA. And there's some dark demonic stuff going on there. And it's they don't even try to hide it anymore. It's just right in your face. I don't think, and it may be different now because I'm not engaged in a lot of the stuff going on downtown. It's a whole different scene down there anymore. I don't have no desire to go down there. I mean, I'm past all that stuff.
Yeah, me too.
But it's still, I mean, we make our living off of people looking, idolizing us.
Oh, yeah.
That's what it all is.
I get it. And, man, we came through, I tell people all the time, there'll never be another era, I don't think, in our lifetime that'll ever compare from 1989 to 1999, 2000 or whatever. I can remember to this day going to the murder market, and Atlantic was right there on the corner.
That's Virginia's to y'all that don't know.
Yeah, can we say that? Yeah. But, Elroy Kahanic and all them were in there, and, the windows were up, and you could hear music coming out of there. And,
you drive down 18th Avenue, and every little crappy house was a publishing company or a little
I
demo
remember Rich
studio.
Fagan and Rob Royer walking in there with Be My Baby Tonight, and just didn't have no appointment, nothing. Walk in there
over to the music mill, and Harold Shed'd be upstairs, and you could go down the stairs to the ping pong pool table room. I mean, we ran Music Row.
I can't believe you said Harold Shedd, man. I the best quick story on Harold Shedd. I had no idea, who Harold Shedd was. And you remember behind Shoney's Inn, there was a Hall of Fame lounge back there.
Spent a lot of time there. I had my own table.
Yeah, I would go in there like on a Monday or Tuesday night, do an amateur night, and try to make a little money.
Well, Monday night was chart night. That's usually when we were there.
Well, I was in there. I didn't have nothing charting, I can tell you. But, man, I would do that maybe one Monday night a month. And there was a guy in the back of the room, had all the girls around him,
That would have been me.
And I'd get ready to leave, and this guy would come up to me, and he'd shake my hand and say, man, that was a funny song you did. And he'd shake my hand. It'd be a $100 bill. $100 bill in my hand. I said, I can't take it. Take it. I'd get a room. I'd take the $100, get a room. This went on probably 5-6 times over the course of a year, maybe. Come to find out, it was Harold Shedd. It was Harold, give me the money. So when me and Cracker went to the CMAs in 2003 or 4 together, I knew that Harold was going to be there. And I stopped and got $500 bills and saw Harold backstage in the back. And I went up to him and I said, hey, man, it's good to see you. And he pulled his hand out, shake mine, and I had 5 $100 bills in my hand and shook his hand, put them $500 bills in. Now, he didn't take it. And the thing about Harold is he didn't remember doing it. And you know why?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. He said, man,
it's like that line in Time March's Own.
Yeah, absolutely. And I said, well, just trust me. He gave it back to me. I said, I promise you, on 4 or 5 different occasions, you slid me $100. And boy, it sure did make a difference sleeping in a motel room on an air mattress, I can promise you. So
I sure miss Music Row the way it was, man. Have you been down Music Row in a while?
Oh, man, I go down. I went yesterday.
It's not the same, man. It used to, my analogy was, it was like Music Row is like this little town right in the middle of this big city. It was our own thing, man. We had our own vibe. I mean, everybody, we were kind of self-contained. Nobody really bothered us up in those 3 streets.
It was unbelievable.
It was a great time, and the music business has changed a lot. I mean, back then you had Printer's Alley. Lower Broad was not anything anybody went and hung out at. There was Tootsie's. Legends, I guess. There was 2 or 3.
Phil and Steel.
That was all in Printer's Alley.
Yeah,
you had Barbara's. You had the rock and roll place. You had, what was it? Not Slim's. What was his name? The old guy from the opera that got
Ernest.
They got killed down there in his bar.
Oh yeah, I know you're talking about. I can't
what
remember
was his
name though.
No,
my dad could tell you, but
yeah, it was all the way down at the end of Printer's Alley, and he was one of the old opera. String Bean.
Yeah.
He got killed in Centerville. That's
I
right next to my county.
I thought he got killed in that bar.
String Bean. Didn't they kill him at his house?
No,
I think they, but he had a bar down there.
he
but
did.
I think
But
that he
they
had,
said everybody said that he hid his money in the walls and
yeah,
stuff.
he carried a lot of money on him too.
He didn't believe in banks.
Yeah.
So they broke in either at his house or at that
the
bar.
Yeah, they got him one way or the other.
Yeah, it says they were in their house and killed his wife and
Printer's
him.
Alley was just awesome back in the day.
Yeah, man, it was. But back then I loved it so much. When I first got to town before social media, there was you go to Printer's Alley. There was a couple clubs we'd get up and sing at. There was Gabe's.
Yeah.
Which was behind the Broken Spoke on Trinity Lane.
Yep.
Trinity Lane, the Broken Spoke was in the hotel right there. It was like a Radisson or something. And then Gabe's, you went down this little gravel lane. There's this little square cinder block building in the back. It was those two, and it was the Rose Room out on Stewart's Ferry Pike.
Rose Room.
Yeah, you remember the Rose Room?
It's the first time I've heard that name in years.
Yeah. And then when you wanted to go have a good time, you went to the Wrangler out on Murfreesboro Road.
Silverados.
Silverados was what it was turned into
yes,
after
sir.
Wranglers was shut down. That was the place. They didn't have a band.
Fun there.
Oh, lots of fun. We had
Lots
big time
of fun.
there. But it was just different, man. The whole scene in Nashville was different back then, and it's like we've become so corporate now.
Yeah, I wouldn't even know how to navigate it now. I would have no idea how to go about doing it. I don't even know how they do it now. But me and Toby was down. Where was it? The Flats play they started down there. It's like not Fiddling Steel, but one of them places that they played at. Me and Toby had been out one night. We were with Scotty Emmerich and TK. And
Yeah.
some guy kept coming up to Toby. We started out at Morton's or somewhere, eating steaks because Toby was buying. And
Of course.
and this guy came up to Toby and was like wanting his autograph. Toby said, "I'll be glad to sign it, but not till I get done eating, And so the guy said a few expletives under his breath, walked off. And so we got done, and Scotty left, and it was me and Toby and TK. We went somewhere else and was having a few drinks. Well, here comes that guy again. Different bar, different place. Here he come again. Comes up to Toby and says something real smart, and Toby says, "Best thing you can do is probably go enjoy your evening just like we're going to enjoy ours." So the guy hurried on out of his way, and then TK leaves, and me and Toby end up 1 o'clock in the morning down in that bar wherever the Flats played. They wasn't there then, but it was 1 o'clock in the morning. We was hammered. They wasn't about 11 people in that bar. I look over to the right side of me for some reason. Here he came. That dude, here he come again. I thought, this ain't going to be good here because we all hammered. He's hammered, and this Toby's 6'4", and you ain't but 5 foot nothing, and it's going to be ugly. And that guy, sure enough, I'll never forget as long as I live, he come over there at our table, and he looked at Toby and looked at me, and he said, "I just got one quick question before I get out of here." And Toby didn't really acknowledge him, and the guy said, "How much y'all spend on bleach to bleach y'all's hair so y'all look like a tag team bunch of wrestlers?" Never forget it. Talking about me and Toby. And I thought, well, this is going to be the end of your life right here. Because I'm not going to do nothing, but Toby is. Toby got up, and he got that guy in the god-awfulest position you've ever seen, like he was carrying a 12-pack of beer out of a convenience store, had him by his belt loop, and this guy was on his hands and knees kicking like a little puppet, and Toby was just toting him out through there, and I thought, I got two choices. I can sit here and laugh and watch Toby handle it, or I can go over there and get me one good lick on him. Because I know that the guy can't get me because Toby's got him, and Toby ain't going to let nothing happen to me. So I ran over there, dude, and I reared back, and I come up on that guy, and I mean, when I hit, my hand exploded. Blood went everywhere. It made the loudest thump you've ever heard. Toby's like, "Don't kill him. Damn, I got it. Don't kill him. You're going to kill him." And Toby got him out, and I said, "Don't worry about it. I got him, Toby. I got him good for you." And we sitting over there, and I was wrapping my hand up, and it was awful. And I said, "I just didn't want you to think for 1 minute that I didn't have your back." Here was the funny part of it. Toby passed away, back in February, I think. And that's when he was diagnosed, but he passed away several months ago. And I never had the chance to tell him that I hit the floor. I never even hit that guy. I buried my fist in the concrete floor, missed him by 2 foot, but I never told Toby no different. So to that day, till he passed away, he always thought, well, he got him.
I saw Toby. I remember we played the songwriter. What was it? Ask Av or BMI? Was it BMI at the Opry at the rhyming that we did?
Yeah, it was for the songwriter.
Because I was there, they were acknowledging uh, uh,
Bobby.
Bobby Braddock, and Blake was there, and Garth was there, and
Yeah.
it was all about Bobby Braddock. That's what it
Right.
was. And I got to visit with Toby a little bit then, and he was still very positive. This would have been November, and I think he did pass away about February of that
Can't remember
this
exactly when it was.
earlier this year in 24. But I spent a lot. Me and Toby were close for a long time, man. I mean,
And I love that dude. He did a lot of nice things for me, as he
he was
did
solid, man.
a lot of people. My mother had a heart attack. We was on the Brooks and Dunn tour out in Bakersfield, California. And, Toby knew I didn't fly. I was out with Chesney, was in a plane crash, and I wouldn't fly. And Toby literally, I was bawling, I thought Mom was going to die. I didn't know what to do. I was 2,300 miles from home. And Toby literally damn near got up in the bunk with me and had an envelope. And he said, look, I know you don't like to fly, but he said, I went ahead and bought you 10 or 12 plane vouchers. So if your mom gets sick, I've got it mapped out how you getting back home, so if you need to stop in New Mexico, here's a plane ticket. If you need to stop in Arkansas, here's a plane. He bought them all the way home for me. If I needed to get on an airplane, I could. And so I didn't get to do the last weekend of the tour. And it was the best summer I'd ever spent in my life. I can't even describe it. It was me and Keith, Urban, Troy and Eddie, Toby and Kix and Ronnie, and it was just a wonderful summer. And I was really upset that I couldn't be there that last weekend of the tour. I was with my mom. It was Sunday night. And that whole Sunday during the day, I drove around, had all their CDs in, listening to everybody's CD. And about 6 o'clock at night, my phone rang. And it was Joey Floyd. You remember Joey as a guitar player. Joey called, and he was loud. And I said, man, what's going on? He said, shut up and hang on a minute. So I hung on a minute, and I could hear Toby talking. And he said, Joey handed Toby the phone, and Toby was on the stage with his guitar and a microphone. He said, hey, everybody, just want to let everybody know Cledus couldn't be with us tonight. We missed him on the last leg of the tour. His mom got really sick, couldn't be here tonight. So if everybody in Pittsburgh could let Cledus know we're thinking about it, let me hear some Cledus. And 18,000 people was going, Cledus, Cledus, Cledus. He got on the phone, said, love you, man. See you when I get home. Hung up. Wow. Coolest thing in the world to have somebody take the time, out of their set, 30 seconds to do that. I say 18,000, might have been 10. Still a lot, though.
Or 4.
Son, I do shows now. Sometimes they all come in the same car.
How many parodies have you done?
Oh my God, dude! I don't know.
You don't do a greatest hits?
If any of them's great, I will do it. Yeah, man. Probably over the course of my whole career, I think I did maybe more videos than anything. 37 or 38 videos at CMT.
So when you go out and do a show, do you do all parodies? Do you
Pretty
do
much,
any?
yeah.
And how many of those are you doing?
Heck, probably 15.
And how relevant is mine? Is
It's
it like
on
the
there.
number
Oh
one?
yeah, dude.
It's like when you do every night.
I do it every night.
Do you do the modulation
Can't
too?
do it. I tell them, I say, everybody's got a Christmas
You
banger.
do the modulation too?
I don't want to get into that. It's all on tracks. I tell them, I say, hey, but not everybody's got a Thanksgiving banger. And I said, I promise y'all, at Thanksgiving, you will
You'll
remember.
bake you a country ham.
You will be singing this song. And so that was a great one.
I thought it was a rite of passage. I wondered why it took so long for you to do one on
Buddy,
me. You did one on everybody else.
Tracy used to say that's when you made it, but that wasn't always the case. Heck, that Razor and Tie record deal I had, I think they sent me $13,000 to do the whole album with. I spent 6,000 of it. I didn't know I could keep the other 8. I sent it back to them, and that record sold 730,000 records, and I never did see a royalty check.
You need to audit.
We fix it too.
Yeah,
dude, because they was some money there. Then I stayed there.
They ain't gonna give it to you out of the goodness of their heart.
Oh no, I got to go find it. But I left there and went to Sony. I stayed at Sony for about 2 records. Went from there to Audium, I think, which is New York. The company in New York. Then I went from there to Curb to Warner Brothers, and Warner Brothers was the last one I had.
Yeah.
Peter Strickland and Espo, if you know Espo over there, they called me back in 2010. I never even heard of Espo or Peter Strickland. I was living in Tampa, and he said, hey, is this Cledus? I said, yeah. He said, it's Peter Strickland, Warner Brothers. He said, you wouldn't be interested in a record deal, would you? Now, that don't have. I thought it was a prank call. Ain't nobody going to call me off for no record deal. And I said, well, I ain't thought much about it, but, what you got? And he said, well, we'll call you tomorrow with Espo, and I had to Google him, see who he was. And the next day they called and said, hey, we was looking at your sound scans, and you sold about many of some of these people we got hanging on the wall. You want to come do a few records with us? And I said, I'm in. He said, we'll send you $40,000. We'll overnight you $40,000 and welcome to Warner Brothers. He said, do you want to get an attorney? And I said, for what? Hell, ain't going to change nothing. Send me the money. So, the record deals don't happen that easy no more, I'm going to tell you.
Yeah, you got to have 1 million followers on TikTok before they even consider you these days. It's a whole different world.
That's the first thing they ask, I hear, is how many followers you got.
You do a lot of social media stuff?
I do. I try to. I enjoy Instagram. I don't have no luck on. I think I got maybe close to 500,000.
Bigger on OnlyFans, feet model and stuff. Yeah, I've know some people that are into that.
Oh yeah, I heard. We don't get into that. TikTok, I like watching it today, boy. We don't get into.
I'm gonna have to get my thumb re-sleeved here pretty soon from all the scrolling I do on the damn TikTok.
Yeah, we ain't gonna tell on her though. You do it much? You fool with it at all?
No more than I have to. I mean, the podcast, this has been a great tool for me. I mean, we're doing content tomorrow for a few hours, and I typically have to do that periodically, but I'm not I don't post. I don't do all that stuff. I mean, I got a staff of people that do that stuff. I mean, I'm not comfortable with it. I didn't grow up in all that stuff, man.
Let me ask you a question now.
All right.
And I've said this a million times to people, back, especially all them acts that were on Atlantic, but you ever, when it gets quiet, you ever sit back and think what kind of career you've had? Because I'm going to tell you right now, it ain't nothing but damn one hit after the next and the next and the next and the next. And not many people nowadays have that kind of success and career.
It's been probably an amazing experience. What I do think about as I look back is if I hadn't have made the leap of faith, and if I had let fear control me and not taken advantage and gone for it when I didn't have obligations and responsibilities, what would I be doing now? I'd be at the cement plant, at paper mill back home, or working at Cooper Tire. Those were the big opportunities for somebody without a college degree. You go back home, you go to a plant, and you look forward to holiday overtime.
Pants and an Oxford.
Yeah, hard hat. You look forward to holiday overtime, so you can make triple time instead of being home with your family on Christmas Day. That's what you got to look forward to.
That first record, dude, that thing was that was
It's
stout.
been amazing, man. And I say this all the time. For every one of us that make it, there's thousands of kids out there that are really talented that never get a shot for one reason or another, that dream the dream that it just never happens for.
Paul Overstreet told me one time, one of the greatest songwriters up here, I had a chance to write with him, and we had wrote this thing and sent it to Renee Bell and, at Sony. And Paul, I was at a hotel room. Paul called me one night, and he said, hey, man, Renee just called and want to put this song on hold for Chesney. What do you think? It's called $100 Car. And I said, yeah, I mean, I'm good with it, but hold ain't nothing but a heartache, most of the time, heartbreak. And he said, you got a minute? I thought, I must have said the wrong thing. And he said, let me tell you something. He's real adamant, too. He said, there's about 5,000 people sitting at a coffee table tonight with a pack of cigarettes, a yellow notebook, and some pencils, and they've just finished what they think is the best song that's ever been written, and nobody will ever hear it.
Amen.
He said, they ain't got enough money to even do a demo on it. He said, but today, something that you created, somebody called and said, we think enough of that to put it on hold because somebody may cut it. And he said, if you don't get the hold, you don't get the cut. If you don't get the cut, you don't make the record. If you don't make the record, you don't get the single. And if you don't get the single, you don't get nothing. So he said, the next time you get a hold, he said, go have a beer and celebrate, but don't ever pour mouth me about a hold again. You understand? I said, yes, sir, Mr. Overstreet.
Wise advice.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And I think it's even harder now. I think it's harder to get songs cut now.
Nightmare.
Yeah, and I remember back in the day, man, you get 4, 5, 6 album cuts don't get a single. I mean, you get
Just-
4 or
just
5
album
cuts a year,
cuts, yeah.
you're making $250,000 a year. Nowadays, if you ain't getting a single, you ain't getting paid.
Only way we could probably do it now is to assassinate Hardy. That's about it. Him and Ernest, if we could put them in a tow sack somewhere for about a year, we could maybe sneak one in. But man, these dudes nowadays, I mean, Morgan, they're sick talented.
It's just a different day, man, out there. You can listen to some of those records and they're all over the place. I like a lot of it. Some
Yeah.
of it I don't quite grasp. And you're cutting rap songs, you're cutting and cutting great traditional country stuff too. It's just I guess that's the audience that we're playing to now. It's just
I
completely
like
different.
Zach Top.
I like him a lot.
He's good. It'd be hard for me. I love radio with a passion. Did it for years, but the only way I'll do it again is if I do classic country. Our genre. And I ain't talking about 60s, 70s. I mean, I love George
80s,
Jones.
90s, 2000s.
Yeah, that's as far as I do it because I can't be convincing on the other stuff. I don't know enough about it. And I mean, I did 52 shows with George Jones, in a row back in the day when he was.
Did he ever backhand you?
I tell you what he did do. Whew. He was a lot of fun. He wasn't drinking at this time.
Yeah.
We was out in San Francisco somewhere, and it was about 4 o'clock in the morning. He called me in my hotel room, said, Earl,
Hey, Cledus.
let's play a little blackjack. I said, well, all right. When George calls, you get up.
Oh, yeah.
And I went down there and met him, and we got at a table. It's 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning. He slid $5,000 worth of chips over to me. I said, George, I don't need your money. You paying me to be out here. You keep it. He said, let me tell you something. He said, you know that good-looking woman I'm married to? I said, oh, yeah, I love her. She's unbelievable. He said, I'm old. I said, well, no, you ain't that old. And he said, look, I'm going to die eventually. My goal is just to have enough money left in the bank to cover that last check. He said, I ain't leaving her all that money. Her go lay up with some good-looking young man. Shit, let's spend it. So we did. And it didn't last long.
Yeah.
And it was gone. We played, you played the Grand Palace before in Branson.
Oh, absolutely.
Dude, I went and played the Grand. It's the worst show of my life. And there's been a bunch of them. That was the worst one. We played the Grand Palace. And I go out there, and it's packed to the rafters. And I got on them overalls with the belly cut out and some flame boots on or something. And I looked out in the audience. There wasn't about 8 people breathing on their own. They had tanks hooked up. And, and let's hear, when I walked out, they booed. I mean, I ain't talking about a smattering of a boo. They booed.
They came to boo.
They came to boo. I cut my set about 40 minutes short, and I wasn't doing but 45. And I had to get out of there. It's just the god-awful thing I've ever seen. Well, George's band would come out, and they would play 2 or 3 songs, So before George ever walked on stage, they booed the band. I mean, booed the piss out of them. Boo, boo. Here come George. They erupt. They go crazy. George does about 3 songs, says, well, I'm going to take a break, let Lucky over here do a little Foggy Mountain breakdown. Let me give me a drink of water. They booed the fiddle player. I ain't never saw nothing like it. I ain't never saw nothing like it since. Well, we got done, and we was in the green room, whatever it's called, and Nancy was standing there, and I was right beside George, and the owner came up and said, George, loved having you this week. Been great seeing you, but next time we probably will get a little bit of a different opening act. Now, I mean, I'm standing right there, and George, I'll never forget as long as I live. George said, why you at it? Get another headliner, because me or him, neither one's coming back. And we went and got in a limo with Nancy and left, and we never went back, far as I know, ever.
My favorite story, you learn when you go on to meet and greet, because back in the early 90s, the first big tour I was on was with Jones.
Oh, God, yeah.
And so that was the Rockin' Chair tour,
yeah.
the Crown Royal Red Man tour is what it was back then. So they alternated me. I was on a lot of them. Chestnut was on some. John Anderson was on some. We kind of rotated through, and we'd all get up on stage and not do Rockin' Chair with him, the big finale.
Yeah.
But we did big meet and greets with the sponsors and everything for the show. And you'd be walking down the hall and everything, going to meet and greet. George right beside me, and he just backhanded, like, bam, right there between the legs. Take a bow, son. I mean, just pop you in the cod, son. Just whop you with the back of his hand and just laugh his old ass off. Oh, you started walking around like this.
Out of breath.
Oh, just because he would catch you off guard and just pop. I'm not talking about a love tap either. I'm talking about a
Knock
whop.
your breath out.
Oh, yeah.
See, how many people going to sit in this chair? Well, for your show, they will, but these young boys, they'll never know what that's like. No. I mean, that's...
Here's one of my favorite memories of George that was just showed the humility and the sweet nature of him. This was probably about 2 years before he died. And he died, was it 2002 or 3? When did George pass away? I can't remember the exact.
Close to it.
Anyway,
Whenever Earnhardt got... No, that wasn't it. That wasn't when it was.
Anyway, we had... Fireside had moved... 2013. Okay, so it was a couple more years before George passed away, and Nancy had gotten this charity project that she wanted me and George to do a duet on that they were working on. Fireside wasn't at the place that it was over on 18th Avenue. Fireside had moved up on 17th Avenue, and George Clinton was in there. I don't know if you ever did any work with George Clinton. That was pretty much his studio. But we went in there. And George, by then, George couldn't hear anymore, and he didn't have breath. He wasn't able to sustain notes. And I'd gotten my vocal part done on the song, and George went in the vocal booth, and he was in there working on it. He said, "Son, come here and help me out a little bit." And I remember going in there, and George would say, "I'm having a hard time seeing, and I can't hear. Can you sing the line for me?" And I would go through line by line, and I would sing the line for him, and I'd stand in there in the booth with him till he finished the record. That was, and he was, "Oh, son, I used to be able to do this without thinking about it." I mean, it was the most humbling experiences for me. I shared a moment with George Jones at a time and place that nobody else, to my knowledge, ever got to have. And it was powerful for me.
Absolutely. Something you'll never forget.
Yeah.
Name a bigger moment than that.
Nah, there's not one in my life.
Compare that to a gold record, there ain't no comparison.
Having my kids.
Well, yeah.
I mean, George Jones to be at a place where he trusted me that much, that was very special for me.
He was a super nice. It was the hardest gig, I'm gonna tell you though, because man, people come to a George Jones show, they come to see George Jones.
Oh, yeah.
You know,
and you know what? He had tried to always he didn't want a headline. "Well, son, why don't you go out there and close tonight? And I'll go back and have some pinto beans and watch
his
football
anxiety
game."
get
He
it.
just didn't care.
No, he didn't care.
But what he go, God Almighty! I mean, and just light the he'd be 80 years old and just light the freaking place
He
up.
could sing it, buddy.
Oh,
I mean, there was just something about that voice, you know, that was.
I remember, I mean, as a kid, you know, I was doing the Haggard stuff and the Keith Whitley stuff. I always had great bottom end. But George's range for a 16, 17-year-old kid, whew, I mean, put him up there with Statue of a Fool by Ricky Van Shelton. I mean, I would spend hours in the shower with a towel around trying to hit those high notes. It took me years to be able to do that shit.
He could nail it though.
Oh God,
I
George,
guarantee.
And he had the bottom end. I mean, he's George. George could hit it all, man.
I never met, you know, I didn't get here after Conway had already died. I was a big Conway fan.
Yeah.
I didn't get to meet Keith.
I didn't get to meet Conway. Didn't get to meet Keith.
Yeah, he had died prior to me getting here. But the George thing, career wise, I mean, Lord, I loved, you know, touring with Kix and Ronnie. I was out with them for 3 years, you know, and it was a wonderful experience. But you know, they'll go down as legends, you know, they are, no question. But George is you know, to have been friends and could call George Jones a friend, and you know, we did a duet together called, you know, I Was Country when country wasn't pop, and you know, he came in the studio and sang it, man, and I was just enamored, you know, thinking how I was sitting on Brooks and Dunn's bus one night with all of us, with Toby and everybody on it. We was going to some club, and I had my head down in my hands, and I was thinking, how did I pull this off? I mean, how did I get from a bridge in Jacksonville, Florida, to sitting out here with, you know, 2 or 3 of the great. Toby, he hadn't even really, he was the you know, the next to last guy to go up, but I don't think he was getting about 50 grand at that point, you know. Of course, back then, I guess that was a lot of money, but it was a fun time. I miss that. I miss that more than anything. Going doing shows now, you know, I enjoy the people and the storytelling and all that, and what I'm sitting here doing, but it's almost like, now Lynn didn't get out of here, it's almost like I never wanted to be that guy that was just on, you know, played in the big leagues, and I felt like I did, you know, with all of y'all. And I say y'all because all y'all my friends, you know, but I didn't want to go from the big leagues to the minors. It's hard. It's hard, you know, when you're standing up in front of thousands, and you know, the applause and the acceptance, and people love what you do, and then, you know, you walk in somewhere and, you know, they're not all there, and I miss it. I'm writing a song now with Jeremy Bussey. I'll have to send it to you. It's probably the best title I've ever came up with in my life, and a lot of people live it. And when I got the idea, I thought, man, it might be funny, and then I thought, no, it ain't, because I've lived it, and a lot of people live it. And it's called post-stardom depression instead of postpartum depression, you know. And I got it from a guy I was walking down Broadway a couple of months ago when I was here. I was down there, and he got to talking to me and said, yeah, I used to play at so-and-so. He said, my spotlight ain't as bright as it used to be, you know. And he said,
What a great line.
yeah.
Oh.
He said, my pen don't, my Sharpie ain't as it ain't as good as my handwriting with my Sharpie ain't as good. But he said, you know, I'd rather be old has been than ever was, I reckon. And I could tell he was just, you know, trying to just hang on to what little bit he had left. And I thought, man, that post-stardom depression, you know, we several of us have lived it. So I'm gonna try to write it as a serious thing, you know, pull it off.
Brother, what's all your socials? Give me all your socials where people can find you.
Yeah, it's
keep
just
up
all
what's
Cledus T. Judd, everything.
Man.
.com, and I got they're all up there. I try to be active on it, but thank you for having me, man. I've been wanting to do this one for a long time. I've known you for a long time, and you always been awful kind to me.
Thank you for your friendship, brother.
Yep, absolutely.
It's been quite the journey, hasn't it?
Yes, sir, it has. I'm glad that I'm still around. You know, I hope whatever time God's got left for me. You know, when we get our age, we fairly close. You ain't got as many steps left. You know, we done took most of them.
Yeah.
So the ones I got left's gonna mean something. If it don't bring me enjoyment and some kind of fulfillment, I'm out.
I love you, my friend.
Love you too, buddy. Thank
Cledus T. Judd.
you. Yep.